Hello, everyone. Greetings from Illinois, in the United States of America, all the way across the world to the Philippines. Tonight, our topic is a counseling tool and intervention strategies for sexual abuse victims suffering from anger difficulties. And so, what I will do is talk about the behavioral um, characteristics or definitions of how anger is expressed. And then we will talk about long term goals for the client and with these issues of anger difficulties. And then this resource that I'm using also has short term objectives and therapeutic interventions. And a lot of them do overlap, so I'm going to try to not be repetitive if I can do that with these. But I want to say at the beginning that we we've talked about trauma and how that affects people in some of my didactics. And I just want to begin by saying traumatic events inflict wounds to the soul of a person. And so that wound is deep, no matter what the trauma, and it is an ongoing journey of healing. So when the soul is wounded, it doesn't heal very quickly. So we're talking about a very painful subject of sexual abuse and molestation, and is a violation to personhood, to the soul. And so there are a lot of feelings, emotions around that sexual abuse, which gets expressed in depression or the opposite of aggression, anger. And you may know that when we repress anger, we turn it inward. It it definitely causes mental issues of depression and anxiety. So if anger is not acknowledged or expressed in appropriate ways and eventually let go or find healing, then in turning that anger into creative ways of dealing with it, then it can have very negative effects. So, and you know that the Bible says in Ephesians 4:27 that we can be angry, but do not sin. So do not act on that anger, and don't let the sun go down on your anger. So resolve anger. But for traumatic wounds, trauma, PTSD, and all of the things that we've talked about, it is an ongoing progression. It's a journey of healing, progression of healing. And so just wanted to say that at the beginning. And now I'll talk about some of the behavioral definitions of anger difficulties. One is unexpected, totally unexpected, and unpredictable feelings of rage that have occurred since having been sexually abused. And these are extreme situations or circumstances or characteristics of anger that has been um, burning for a while inside that person, and it just comes on them like a big ocean wave, just feelings of extreme rage. Also, a history of the suppression of anger, which I mentioned can turn to depression, and regarding being sexually abused, so resulting in depression or self destructive behaviors or somatic symptoms, physical, everything is physically wrong. So that is another behavior. The third one is a disassociation, just plain disassociating or numbing of feelings of anger toward the sexual offender. And four, a history of explosive, aggressive outbursts that are out of proportion to precipitating stressors. So, external stressors leading to very aggressive outbursts, which are destructive, can be destructive to people, property, so out of control. And a person with anger difficulties from sexual abuse usually have a history of these explosive, aggressive outbursts. Number five, overreactions of hostility to very mild or insignificant irritants. So, very reactive, gets angry very easily. Number six, use of verbally abusive language. So, have you ever heard someone say, when I'm really, really, really angry, and this can be a Christian, uh, when I get angry, I want to curse. And that's kind of what this is talking about, use of verbally abusive language. It's that outward expression of anger. Number seven, body language or tense muscles, clenched fist, clenched jaw, glaring looks, or refusal to make any kind of eye contact. And then the last one, eight, a behavioral definition of anger difficulties, is the use of passive aggressive patterns. Some examples of this would be social withdrawal due to anger, lack of complete or timely compliance in following directions or rules, or complaining about authority figures behind their backs, or non participation in meeting expected behavioral norms. So, just very passive aggressive to some of the daily, weekly living, business, taking care of business, school, work, just kind of um, rebellious against the norms. So, those are eight behavioral definitions. And now I'm going to give you five long term goals. So, number one is to help the client or patient accept the right to have and express anger toward the victim, that it is natural, normal, it's a violation of that person. It is exploiting. It is just completely overpowering that person, and it wounds the soul. And so, helping the victim to understand that anger is a human reaction to a loss, a grief, an act of violence. So we want to give that person validation and tell them that you will help guide them to more self-empowering and healing ways to acknowledge the anger and to express it. So accept the right to have and express anger toward the victim. Yeah. So number two, decrease over the goal is to help the patient or client decrease over time intensity and the frequency of angry feelings, and increase the ability to recognize and appropriately express angry feelings. So decrease the intensity and the frequency of anger feelings, and also to recognize when it's appropriate to express those in healthy ways. Number three, develop an awareness of current angry behaviors. So this is a big part of counseling someone with these that has been abused and has these anger difficulties, because you want to validate, empathize, and help them express the anger toward the abuser as a victim, and that they are a victim of that. You want to help them know that they can decrease the intensity and the frequency over time, and to develop an awareness of current angry behaviors. So the best way to do this is to record, right? As soon as a person becomes aware, then they write it down and keep a journal or a log. And so this way, they're becoming more and more aware. They write it down, they can go back to it, and it can be a reminder of what they are learning to be aware of. And any kind of passive aggressive behaviors or suppression behaviors or aggressive behaviors toward people, especially, or a situation. Number four, so we're going to be talking about awareness a lot. Help the patient, the client, come to an awareness and acceptance of angry feelings. So we talked about helping them get out and identify and become aware of anger and why they're angry. And so the acceptance after a trauma to the soul is not immediate. It's this journey of acceptance. So more and more aware and accepting of angry feelings. And then some interventions will come with that as well. And then the fifth one is become capable of handling angry feelings. A person can become confident and feel adequate that they could handle angry feelings in constructive ways that enhance their daily life, daily functioning. Okay, I'm going to name those again real quickly. Number one long-term goal is to accept the right to have and express anger toward the abuser as the victim. And number two is to learn to decrease overall intensity and frequency of angry feelings. Number three, help them develop an awareness of their current angry behaviors and learning to identify which angry behavior is passive aggressive, which is aggressive that might even lead to violent aggression, or an angry behavior that is called repression, that's repressing, suppressing the anger. So that's number three. And the way that you could help the client is to encourage them to journal these as they identify and become aware of these angry behaviors. Number four, there's the awareness, but even stronger is learning to accept the angry feelings while developing um, better control and therefore serenity of the healing, and accepting that that intense anger can be healed and eventually it will fade. And then number five, help them to become capable of handling angry feelings in constructive ways. So helping them to become more and more confident that they can be adequate in handling the angry feelings in constructive ways, which is a big learning process as well as healing process. Okay, so those are the 5 long-term goals. And now I'm going to cover um, short-term objectives. So this is an objective as a counselor that you have with your client, and then some alongside those objectives is the therapeutic interventions. And objectives are ways that you want to accomplish the long-term goal, right? And so, number one short-term objective is to verbally acknowledge experiencing feelings of anger. So, to help a person say to you, a trusted person, a trusted counselor or chaplain or pastoral caregiver, to be able to acknowledge those feelings to someone else. So that's a short term objective. And then how to do that, the technique, the therapeutic intervention, is to assist the victim in really, really, truly identifying the reality that he or she is angry, and you want to ask them to draw them out to explore the feelings so that that person can really label that and feel that again and own it, that it is real and it is painful but must be acknowledged. And so, one way you can help draw them out is as they begin to talk around it, or they just come out and say, I am angry, or they show body language of being very upset or angry whenever the talk therapy is leading toward the anger and they're experiencing it and then they say it. And so, little ways to draw them out would be to say something like, as we're talking about this, I noticed or I observe your tenseness in your body language. Can you tell me what you're feeling right now? And it's okay, whatever you're feeling, because there's no judgment on my part. I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you, and you can trust me. And so, little ways to draw that person out so that they are, maybe if they have been suppressed, repressed for a long time, then it's going to be a slower process of them, uh, especially the suppressed anger, to identify that and know that that's what they're feeling. Um, Two books that are recommended that you can assign the client to read is a book called Of Course You're Angry by Rossellini and Worden, Worden. Rossellini, Rossellini. So by Rossellini and Worden. And that is called Of Course You're Angry. And then another book called The Angry Book by Rubin, and that is Rubin. So you're asking them, telling them this is a good resource to help in their healing process. And then after you assist them in the verbal acknowledgement of their feelings, then help them identify targets and causes that cause the reaction of anger in their daily life. And another word for this would be triggers. So remember uh, anger from a trauma, hurt, pain, sadness, anger at the victim, um, is always underneath, but it can just come up like a wave and then go back down. And so there are precipitators or triggers that can sometimes just cause that person to remember to feel that anger again. So identifying those are very important as a short-term objective. And these two books that I just gave you are the titles and authors would help them be able to identify some of those targets and causes for anger in their daily life. And then we have keep encouraging the client or patient to keep a daily journal that documents actions, behaviors, environmental events, or internal thoughts, writing down their thoughts that cause anger reactions or frustrations. And then you also ask them to write in their journal list of the targets or the triggers that will cause an immediate feeling or emotion of anger, and process that list with them. So those are some therapeutic interventions. And then a number 3 short-term objective is to help them verbalize an increased awareness of their anger expression patterns. So how are they becoming more aware once they're in this counseling process? How are they becoming more aware? So you can also experience as a counselor sometimes a transference of those angry feelings that the client or the patient has, and it is thinking about this, is coming to a awareness, a new awareness, is trying to express it to you as a counselor, And sometimes a person doesn't know how to be creative and appropriate and constructive with the anger initially. And so they might transfer the angry feelings toward you as the therapist, the counselor, directly or indirectly. It's easy to do, hard for the counselor, but it's easy for any person to sometimes transfer the anger or the blame. And that behavior might be also indicated by the patient or the client being somewhat critical of you as a counselor, or sometimes having some reaction of angry outburst, or missing appointments without telling you as a counselor. So those are patterns that start developing when they're dealing with this anger from sexual abuse. Another suggestion would be to refer them to a specialist, and those are called, or a group, a class, anger management, which we've all heard of for a while, about learning to manage anger. And so those are the interventions for number 3. Number 4 is identify how significant others in childhood have modeled ways to handle anger in positive ways. And so you are talking about family of origin, family systems, the genogram. So exploring those methods of discernment and techniques with the client, and identifying with them, helping assist them in identifying the more positive role models that handled anger constructively, like teachers, parents, caretakers, siblings, even. So, and again, they would record this in their journal. So, number 5, short term objective is to identify the pain and hurt of the past or current life that fuels ongoing anger. So, those would be things like past experiences that have caused a lot of hurt and pain that then led to anger. So again, you're writing, the patient client is writing them down, talking about them, and keeping on writing them down, keeping on talking about them. So it's another way of identifying, labeling, naming it, owning it, and getting validated, the feelings validated. And then I had a counselor that told me that I was going to one time, said, if you can identify it and name it and say it out loud, psychologically it loses some of its power over you. And so I think that's good. That's a good concept, and to try to diminish some of the power of anger. And the primal emotion of anger is very powerful, and there's different levels of anger, starting with like mild irritations, frustrations. You can go on the feeling wheel, which is a tool, and you want to empathize, uh, and sincerely, genuinely empathize with and clarify the victim's feelings of hurt and anger tied to the traumas of the past. So that's a painful part of this process, because to relive those hurts and pain and trauma is can be excruciating and very tiring. So be sure to very much to empathize, support, um, give your best presence when someone is doing that. Number six, to help the client verbalize feelings in a controlled, assertive way. So that requires, in a controlled, assertive way, requires some assertiveness skill training. And there are, I don't know about there where you live, but there are, in the States, there are assertive training classes. I don't know if you could get them at university or colleges, but to learn how to be assertive when needed, when it when it's very needed to say something and do something appropriately, with uh, intense situations like this. So, again, I want to say it's a learning process, and it takes a lot of mistakes and sometimes, and learning to communicate well. It's a practice. And I think the big part of assertiveness is being able to use I messages, knowing a person's self, knowing their self, knowing who they are, what they need to communicate and express in a situation or relationship, but always using I and not attack or blame. And that's part of assertiveness training. So you're always processing with a person that has been sexually abused and having anger. It's all coming out in a more open way. So you're processing, you're validating, you're drawing out, you're helping them learn new behaviors and new ways of expressing anger, and not letting it become way out of control. And so, a lot of times you can use creative methods like role play. Role play in counseling is very effective. And so you help the victim develop non self defeating ways of handling anger. So, when they're learning techniques that we've talked about, you just do the role play, and maybe the counselor is the abuser in this role play, or someone else that they uh, just arbitrarily make up. And then you have the victim, who is truly the victim, and they're role playing, and it's a way of practicing what you need to say appropriately. So, there is a book by a Dr. Weisinger called Anger Workout, and it's skills training manual for treating borderline personality disorder, which a lot of severe trauma can uh, lead a person to have this borderline personality disorder. So that's another book. Anger Workout book by Dr. Weisinger. And there's another book called Skills Training Manual for Treating Borderline Personality Disorder. And then we're going into some more specific techniques of short-term objectives, like teaching a patient or a client relaxation techniques to help cope with angry feelings. So you teach the deep breathing techniques, the positive guided imagery. You do it with the client, the patient, where you ask them to close their eyes, and ask them to think of a favorite place that is a happy space for them, and a beautiful place, a place that is serene. And it's called guided imagery. And you just kind of walk them through so that they're imagining they're in that space mentally. And then deep muscle relaxation. And when a person is very intense and upset and angry, you can help them by starting with the major muscles in the body from the feet all the way up, and just consciously, mentally helping them, the brain signals to that muscle to relax by tightening and then contracting and then releasing. And so it's called deep muscle relaxation. So using these relaxation techniques, teaching them that. Number 8, to verbalize an increased awareness of when a person is using maladaptive ways, negative ways of expressing anger. So they can learn to identify their angry patterns, their triggers, their behaviors when they are angry, what that anger feels like. But also a person can learn to be more aware and understand how expressing anger and acting out anger in negative ways, what that impact is on others and themselves. So, writing those down in a journal, listing them. And so, all of this, as you can see, is building this book of self discovery and ways for them to become more confident that they can be healed, and also learn to identify, be aware, express, and keep on doing that until healing takes place. And of course, the ultimate healing, as we know, comes from God's love and grace and salvation in Christ. But it is a reality that people can be sexually abused at any age, and then this trauma to the soul, this wound, it has to be healed. And so they have to understand mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, what that means. And so you're helping them. I think we've covered most of the most important short-term objectives and interventions, techniques, but I think that the most important thing, though, is knowing that you, as a counselor, can help assist someone else by the knowledge that you gain, the awareness that you gain of what it's like from a patient or a client that's been sexually abused. I have never been sexually abused, but I have worked with many, many people that have, from the hospital bed, them sharing their story, to church members, to family members. So you, as a pastor, a counselor, chaplain, you almost can pick up from working with people that have gone through this, imagining what it might be like if it had happened to you as a person, and the feelings that are real and legit, and why. So it's important that you learn these things and help them learn techniques, have resources for them. Sometimes we can't do it all. We can't be the magic bullet, so to speak, that can solve anything and everything. But being empathetic and listening and supportive and comforting, and giving them these long term goals and short term objectives and the techniques that I have mentioned. So I think this is pretty much it. And also, it's important to identify and help the patient to identify, because almost all sexual abuse victims feel like it was their fault. We've talked about sexual abuse trauma back uh, several didactics ago, but it's important to help them know that to help them identify whether they feel like it was their fault, they are to blame. And because if they do and they stay with those feelings about themselves, then that anger and depression can just grow and grow. And so that is another important intervention, is helping them, or listening to hear if they feel self blame for the abuse, and they have not been able to really know that they can be angry at the abuser, and that that is normal and natural. Also, there's sometimes situations where the victim feels pressured to forgive the offender, and that cannot happen just because we believe in forgiveness as a Christ follower. The wound to the soul is so deep and so severe that there is a journey of healing, and in that healing will eventually, that person on their own will come to hopefully get to that stage where they can forgive, but not initially. So they might be pressured by family members, or financial, social pressures, guilt, or self blame. And so it's important to help them understand all of that, that they can't cave in to family or social pressures or religious pressures, but and if they're still blaming themselves, which most a lot of times there's the society and cultural, well, you are to blame, you caused it, you are the one. So sorting through that is important. And eventually, even a victim can confront or articulate to their abuser, the offender. And I don't know how often that happens there in your culture, your country, but it's happening more and more here, where if the opportunity presents itself, even in court or otherwise, then the person can, um, not out of anger, aggressively, but in a way that lets the offender know how hurtful the experience was, the offense was, and how they need to tell them that they are angry and the pain is great. So, before it becomes so violent or enraged that it is harder then to deal with. So those are some of the things, and really and truly, uh, anger can have some positive, and fear can have some positive aspects to it. And so, really for the person who's been abused, to uh, learn how to give a signal or appropriate response to some environmental dangers so that they can be strong in the face of certain situations, and they can show uh, anger in a positive way, and if that makes sense. So that can also be preventative in a way that they take action and preventing another from doing something harmful. And then finally, always counselors can refer to someone else that's more experienced in a certain field, and also medical evaluation. So referring your clients, patients to other resources. I hope this is helpful. This has been about 45 minutes, and Pastor Chaplain Nato can decide what he wants to do, dividing this up. But anyway, this is a hard topic, and it takes a lot of skill building, patience, and prayer and knowledge. So you're learning, and you are going to benefit from your learning. And God bless you all, and I'll see you next time. All right, take care. Bye.